Hello students, let us start today by going back in time. Yes, the beginning of life on this planet. We know it took years and years to be where we are. But how? Did Harry Potter swish his magic stick and boom, we're in the 21st century? Obviously no. So how to know more about lives? Well, biology, as it studies the essence of life on Earth. Generally speaking, the essence is one's innate characteristics. Likewise, metabolism, growth, consciousness, reproduction, to name a few, constitute the essence of living organisms. Simply speaking, you are living because of these characteristics, or scientists will declare you non-living. But who is the driver of this magic? The answer is yes. Reproduction, be it birds, animals, humans, or even those tiny microbes, reproduce young ones. So, let us discuss one of the modes of reproduction, that is sexual reproduction. It is a process in which organisms are created by combining the genetic information from two individuals of different sexes. The genetic information is carried on chromosomes within the nucleus of specialized cells called gametes. These gametes fuse to form zygote during the process of fusion called fertilization. This zygote grows into an embryo to create a whole new organism. And now, why sexual reproduction? This is because it gives an advantage of genes of two parents, upping the chance of survival. It is the master of the great diversity we see today. Surprisingly, it manages to drive us, diverse organisms with some non-diverse patterns that every organism goes through no matter their dissimilarities. Perhaps these will help you clarify. All organisms have to reach a certain stage of growth and maturity in their life before they can reproduce sexually. This phase is called the vegetative phase in plants and juvenile phase in animals, the end of which is the beginning of the reproductive phase. For creating offspring sexually, each organism goes through three distinct phases, namely pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization. Now, let us have a closer understanding of these phases one by one. First is the pre-fertilization stage. It includes the events that take place prior fertilization, that is, gametogenesis and gamete transfer. To make it simpler, let's understand what is a gamete. Well, a gamete is a male or female cell that joins with a cell of the opposite sex to form a zygote, also known as sex or reproductive cell. Gametes are haploid, which means that they contain only half the genetic material necessary to form a complete organism. So, how are gametes formed? Well, it is formed by the process known as gametogenesis, where cell division takes place by two methods. Mitosis, where a cell splits to form identical daughter cells, and meiosis, where a single cell divides twice to form four daughter cells. Sexual reproduction is all about fusion of gametes. Being biparental, it becomes essential for the gametes to be transferred so that their fusion leads to fertilization. Now, these gametes are transferred by various ways. It varies from different organisms. Simple plants like algae use water as a medium, while seed plants use pollens. In humans, the female gamete is stationary, while the male gamete is motile. But a large number of male gametes fail to reach the female gametes. To compensate for this loss, several thousands of male gametes are produced. Fertilization is also known as syngamy. It is the story of male gamete trying to unite with the female gamete to create new life. We have already seen how haploid gametes are formed through cell division. These haploid cells fuse to form diploid zygote, the precursor of an embryo. We have seen how male gametes are produced in large numbers to ensure fertilization taking place. But this becomes all the more important if fertilization is external and takes place outside the body of the organisms to enhance the survival rate of gametes and ensure that they reach the desired target. However, terrestrial plants or us humans carries out this process inside the female body. Usually, the male gametes are smaller, motile, and in vast numbers, and the female gametes are larger, non-motile, and lesser in number in such scenarios. Finally, these gametes fuse to form a zygote. So, what happens next? Events that occur after the zygote formation are what post-fertilization events are all about. Once the single-cell zygote is formed, the next process is the development of zygote, followed by the formation of an embryo. Depending on the place where the development of zygotes takes place, organisms can be viviparous, where the development of zygote takes place inside the body of the organism, or oviparous, where the development of the zygote takes place outside the body of the organisms. However, in all the flowering plants, zygote is formed inside the ovule. The zygote then develops into the embryo. The dictionary defines an embryo as an unborn or unhatched offspring in the process of development. This development occurs in two stages. First, the cell division, and second, the cell differentiation. So, what roles do they play? Well, cell division increases the number of cells in the developing embryo by the process of mitosis. Cell differentiation, on the other hand, helps these cells turn into specialized tissues and organs. I see super bonding between them, so much so that their united we stand policy completely give rise to a new organism. Beauty, diversity, and yet individuality are the essence of the world that surrounds us, where each one is trying to somehow be in the race of life by any and every means that they have at their disposal. In the end, what we get is something that transcends those man-made definitions of life. There is nothing more spectacular than the miracle of birth. Students, we know that individual organisms die without fail. Species continue to live through millions of years unless threatened by natural or anthropogenic extinction. Each and every organism can live only for a certain period of time, and the period from the birth to the natural death of an organism represents its lifespan. For example, the average lifespan of a dog is 10 to 13 years. The average lifespan of a horse is 25 to 30 years. The average lifespan of a Culex pipiens is 6 to 7 days. And the average lifespan of Apis mellifera is 122 to 152 days. The average lifespan of a rice plant is 3 to 4 weeks. And that of a banyan tree is over 200 years. Isn't it both interesting and intriguing to note that the lifespan of different organisms may be as short as a few days or as long as a few hundred years. The lifespans of organisms are not necessarily related to the sizes of the organisms. Whatever be the lifespan, death is a certainty. That is, no organism or individual is immortal. Given this reality, you might be wondering that life has existed for thousands of years on Earth, and some processes must be responsible for this continuity, right? Well, here, reproduction becomes a vital process, without which species cannot survive for long. Each individual leaves its progeny by sexual or asexual means. So, what is reproduction? Well, reproduction is defined as a biological process in which an organism gives rise to young ones known as offspring, similar to itself. These offsprings grow, mature, and in turn produce new offsprings. Thus, there is a cycle of birth, growth, and death. Reproduction enables the continuity of the species generation after generation. As discussed earlier, reproduction can be of two types: asexual mode of reproduction and the sexual mode of reproduction. So students, in this module, we will discuss about the asexual mode of reproduction. So, what is asexual reproduction? Well, in this mode of reproduction, a single individual parent is capable of producing an offspring. As a result, the offspring that are produced are not only identical to one another, but are also exact copies of their parent. Let us discuss some features of asexual reproduction. First, it involves a single parent. Second, there is no gamete formation or fertilization. Third, the whole process takes place in a short period of time. Fourth, rapid multiplication and growth happens. Fifth, there is limited variation. Here, let me tell you something interesting. The term clone is used to describe morphologically and genetically similar individuals. Organisms choose to reproduce asexually by different means, such as first, fission, second, budding, third, fragmentation, fourth, spore formation, and fifth, vegetative propagation. Here, we already know these modes of reproduction, right? So let us discuss asexual reproduction in various organisms. Asexual reproduction is common among single-celled organisms and in plants and animals with relatively simple organizations. In protists and monorins, the organism or the parent cell divides by mitosis into two to give rise to new individuals. Thus, in these organisms, cell division is itself a mode of reproduction. Also, single-celled organisms such as amoeba, paramecium, etc. reproduce by binary fission. In binary fission, a cell divides into two halves and each rapidly grows into an adult. Here, let me tell you something interesting. Under the unfavorable condition, the amoeba withdraws its pseudopodia and secretes a 3-layered hard covering or cyst around itself. This phenomenon is termed as encystation. When the favorable conditions return, the encysted amoeba divides by multiple fission and produces many minute amoeba or pseudopodiospores. The cyst wall bursts out and the spores are liberated in the surrounding to grow into many amoebae. This phenomenon is known as sporulation. We have already studied in class 11th that kingdom fungi and simple plants such as algae reproduce through special asexual reproductive structures and the most common of these is the zoospores. So, what are zoospores? Well, a zoospore is a motile asexual spore that uses a flagellum for locomotion. Other common asexual reproductive structures are conidia, which are found in penicillium, buds found in hydra, and gemmules found in sponges. In yeast, as you can see here, the division is unequal and small buds are produced that remain attached initially to the parent cell and eventually get separated and mature into new yeast organisms or cells. And this is known as, yes, you guessed it right, this is known as budding. Apart from these, in some organisms, the body breaks into distinct segments or fragments, and each fragment grows into an adult capable of producing a new offspring. This mode of asexual reproduction is known as fragmentation, and it is commonly found in hydra, cyanobacteria, sponges, some annelid worms, sea stars, etc. Now let us discuss asexual reproduction in plants. Well, asexual reproduction in plants is termed as vegetative propagation. In plants, the units of vegetative propagation such as runner, rhizome, sucker, tuber, offset, and bulb are all capable of giving rise to new offspring, and these structures are called as vegetative propagules. Here, the formation of these structures does not involve two parents, hence the process is asexual. Well, you might have seen small buds or plants growing out of potato, ginger, etc. These plantlets in the plants rise from the nodes present in the modified stems of these plants. When these nodes come in contact with damp soil or water, they produce roots and finally new plants. Similarly, buds arise from the notches present at the margins of leaves of bryophyllum. This ability is fully exploited by the gardeners and farmers for commercial propagation of such plants. Food crops such as cassava, sweet potato, sugarcane, pineapple, banana, onion, etc. are propagated vegetatively. Plants produced in this way have characteristics identical to the parent plants, and this is the main and the most important advantage of vegetative propagation. So students, in our next module, we will discuss sexual reproduction and the advantages of sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction.
We'll begin with the topic sexual reproduction, fertilization. So in this topic, we'll study about sexual reproduction taking place in the form of fertilization. Very firstly, we'll see what is fertilization. Fertilization, also called syngamy, results in the formation of a diploid zygote. So what is fertilization? It is a process which is also named as syngamy, and it results in the formation of a diploid zygote is an offspring which contains 2n number of chromosomes. That is twice the number of chromosomes as present in an haploid organism. In some organisms, the female gamete undergoes development to form new organisms without fertilization, which is called parthenogenesis. So there is another process known as parthenogenesis, in which a new organism is formed from the female gamete without the process of fertilization taking place. And the example of such organisms are in rotifers and in honeybees. Here in this image, you can see a diploid zygote, that is the one which has 2n number of chromosomes, being shown in the flower. So that was the general definition of fertilization and parthenogenesis. We now come over to types of fertilization. There are two types of fertilization. external fertilization and internal fertilization. We first see what is external fertilization. When syngamy takes place outside the body of an organism, it is called external fertilization. So syngamy, when it takes place outside the body, then it is external. Organisms exhibiting external fertilization show great synchrony between the sexes and release a large number of gametes into the surrounding medium, that is water, in order to enhance the chances of syngamy. So this is an important feature of the organisms which exhibit this type of fertilization. That is, they show a great synchrony between the two sexes and thus they release large number of gametes into the water to enhance the chances of syngamy or fertilization. Example of such organisms being amphibians and fishes. Here you can see the diagram of frog, which is an amphibian. So that was about external fertilization. We now see what is the next type of fertilization, that is internal fertilization. When syngamy takes place inside the body of an organism, it is called as internal fertilization, for example in reptiles and mammals. So unlike external fertilization, where syngamy was taking place outside the body, here syngamy takes place inside the body of the organism. Now in organisms exhibiting internal fertilization, the male gamete is motile and has to reach the egg in order to fuse with it. So the required condition in case of internal fertilization is that the male gamete has to be motile in order to reach to the egg so that both of them fuse. In these organisms, even though the number of sperms produced is very large, there is a significant reduction in the number of eggs produced. So the number of sperms and the number of eggs produced vary in number. That is, the sperms are produced in large numbers, whereas eggs are produced in small numbers. Here you can see an organism in which internal fertilization takes place, that is the snake, which is a reptile. So in a nutshell, we have studied about two types of fertilization, external and internal. In external, syngamy takes place outside the body of an organism, and in internal, syngamy takes place inside. Now in internal, the male gamete is motile, whereas in external, there is a great synchrony between the two sexes so that they release large number of gametes outside the organism.